It's 2015 and a brand new sequel trilogy is on the horizon. I was 9 years old when Star Wars Episode 7 came out.
The new Star Wars movie title has generated serious buzz when it was revealed to be, drumroll please, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
I had gotten into Star Wars around 2013. I remember sitting on the couch watching Disney XD, and this Lego Star Wars show came on.
Best surprise entrance ever. Now you will feel the wrath of... Whoa! This is the ship that defeated me? What a piece of gunk.
Hey, nobody asked you to come aboard, pleather pants.
Don't call me Leatherpants.
I had no idea what Star Wars was at the time, but I remember watching it and loving that episode. I remember my mom came in the room, and as I was watching the show, she told me that the show was based on these Star Wars movies. And naturally, I was intrigued by that, so we went to the library later that day, and we rented like a DVD box set of all 6 movies and watched them over the course of that next week. At that point, I was hooked, and there was no turning back, and just in time for The Force Awakens. Star Wars in general had just skyrocketed to the cultural forefront.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
You couldn't go anywhere without seeing something about Star Wars. Ads were absolutely everywhere. Merchandise at every store you went to, parodies all over YouTube and TV, books, comics, video games, hell, even food. To this day, I think The Force Awakens had the best promotion of any movie I've been around for. As a 9-year-old kid, I watched a lot of cartoons on channels like Disney XD, so I saw so many of the ads for The Force Awakens, and looking back on them today, it's crazy how much movie ads have changed over the last 8 years. We just don't get those kind of commercials like we did for The Force Awakens anymore, and it's a real shame. Granted, I think the main reason those ads worked was because of the pre-existing hype for this pre-existing franchise, and I'm also sure that's the reason Disney decided to invest in them.
They're like knights in space. In the future. But it's a long time ago.
You got the best Jedi in the whole universe. Guess what? Started out as a farm boy.
Really? The Force. It's all around us. It binds us together, guides our actions, helps us do yoga.
And why doesn't the princess just let the boys rescue her?
Because she's a modern and empowered woman unfettered by the antiquated gender roles of a bygone era.
Yeah.
Han Solo. He's a good-looking bad boy. Like your pop.
As a kid, they really sucked me in, and I wanted every single goddamn toy they advertised. I was the perfect age for it, and it got me even more excited for the movie. Also, the content I consumed around that time in general just really made me more aware that there's a whole fan base out there that's also excited about the same thing that I was. I discovered the internet and YouTube around that time, and I remember watching all sorts of videos about supposed dumb leaks that my younger self was too stupid to realize were obviously completely fake. I remember watching videos of other kids about my age having these crazy lightsaber fights, and just in general, all these over-the-top videos that were really just a product of the time.
Cut! Bullets!
And besides those YouTubers who made all the over-the-top, crazy videos around that time, there were also a bunch of YouTubers I watched who covered all sorts of actual legitimate news surrounding the movie leading up to its release, and some of them I actually watch to this day.
On August 15th, 3 photos from the Star Wars Episode 7 camp leaked. One showed a helmet which heavily resembles the original Stormtrooper helmet. Who knows if they're gonna call them Stormtroopers, but they're pretty sleek regardless.
It really just was a special time, and whether you were a Star Wars fan or not, you just simply couldn't escape the hype surrounding The Force Awakens. Even at school, I remember running around with my friends on the playground, reenacting different Star Wars battles in our imagination, and bringing our action figures to the lunch table, and having lightsaber fights at home. It really just was a simpler time. That was my generation's Star Wars. Say what you want about the sequels, but I will always have a soft spot for them. It's a generational thing. Those who grew up with the prequels generally enjoy the prequels and have a lot of nostalgia for them. Just like those who grew up with the original trilogy, and those who grew up with the Clone Wars. I think you could also argue that my generation was the most spoiled in terms of the amount of pure Star Wars content we received. I remember Star Wars Battlefront coming out right before The Force Awakens vividly. At the time, my only game console was a Wii U, so I didn't have the chance to play Battlefront at my house. But one of my close friends had a PS4, and I remember going over to his house and playing split screen with him constantly. I think that because I didn't actually own the game, it made it seem more special to me. And it made those times I actually did get to play it at my friend's house feel even more special. The game came out in November of 2015, literally just a month before The Force Awakens came out. And the game was mostly original trilogy centric, especially at launch, but that didn't stop it from getting the whole Star Wars fanbase that much more excited for The Force Awakens. As if all that wasn't enough to keep my generation occupied with Star Wars content, we had a plethora of books to read too. If you were a kid around this time, you'll probably remember these books. Star Wars Jedi Academy. These books were geared towards elementary-aged kids like myself. I vividly remember them being in our school library of all places and reading them with my friends. Obviously, they weren't canon or anything. These books told the story of a young kid wanting to go to a pilot school and then mysteriously ending up in a Jedi Academy. It was a pretty fun read from what I remember. And I also remember this origami Star Wars book that I'm pretty sure I also found in our school library. It was either that or one of those scholastic book fairs. Anyway, I remember reading it and then making all these origami paper Yoda things. Eventually, after what seemed like an eternity, we reached December of 2015. Christmas break was on the horizon, as was obviously Christmas itself, and of course, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Over a year of build-up, watching the trailers on loop with my friend after basketball practice, watching every single Star Wars video I could find, rewatching all the movies and hogging up our family's DVR storage with all 6 movies that I had recorded, talking endlessly about the movies with my friends as we ate our Star Wars Kraft mac and cheese, watching every single cast interview on YouTube I could find, watching the same toy commercials over and over, hoping to get some of them for Christmas. And then, after all that, the day finally arrived. Star Wars The Force Awakens, released on December 18th, 2015.
Star Wars, boy, The Force Awakens blasting all kinds of box office records. Official numbers so far, $238 million in the U.S., but that number could go even higher.
Over fans flocking to theaters overnight and early this morning to see Star Wars The Force Awakens.
It came out in all the premium formats you'd expect, including 70mm IMAX. You know, at the time I was a 4th grader, I didn't understand the difference between different movie formats. I could have cared less about that. I was seeing Star Wars, and that's all that mattered to me in my little kid head. That's why I honestly couldn't tell you what format I actually saw it in. My mom took me and my friend to go see it, and I vividly remember me and my friend being complete assholes talking about rumors we heard while the movie was playing. My mom claimed she didn't hear anything from us, but I don't know. From what I remember, we were pretty annoying. Maybe it's worse in my head than it actually was, who knows. But at the end of the day, we witnessed the movie, finally. The movie that was all we could think about for an entire year. And with that, the year of Star Wars came to a close. That Christmas I got a bunch of Star Wars merch and toys, and later into 2016 I got the movie on Blu-ray. In fact, it might have actually been my first Blu-ray, I'm not quite sure anymore. Over the next few years, we got a new Star Wars movie every single year. My generation was definitely the most spoiled in terms of the amount of content we got. We had an entire trilogy, 2 spin-off movies, and Star Wars Rebels. From 2015 to now, I've become even more obsessed with Star Wars. I kept collecting all sorts of Star Wars related stuff, from Legos, action figures, and more recently prop replicas. I also went on to learn more and more about the making of all the Star Wars movies, and it's inspired me to pursue a career in filmmaking. Star Wars really has changed my life for the better, and I'm so glad that my generation had our own unique experience with it.